Alright everyone, Epic Slayers here, welcome back. Now that the seasonal character controversy has subsided for a little while, at least until the PTS for Year 2 goes live for testing, when we can all kind of test out the seasonal character model, today I wanted to focus on something a little bit different, and that's game modes for The Division 2, and more precisely, a game mode developed for The Division 2 that never made it, at least according to a news article from Games Radar. So let's get into this one and check out this article. Titled, Cancelled Division Game Began as a Battle Royale mode for The Division 2 before Ubisoft had other ideas for the free-to-play spin-off. Now before we get into the body of this article, I think a lot of you will already know what mode the article is referring to here, and of course it's The Division Heartland, which was, back in May I believe it was, actually cancelled. Let me go over some important points from this article and let me know what you think about this in the comments down below. Publisher Ubisoft scrapped The Division Heartland just yesterday to redeploy resources to bigger opportunities, such as the company's fledgling FPS X Defiant coming next month, and further Rainbow Six Siege projects including a mobile rendition. But Heartland began life as a pretty big opportunity itself as a Battle Royale contender. Now when I covered this news back in May, the news that The Division Heartland had been cancelled for bigger opportunities, I couldn't quite believe Ubisoft thought that X Defiant and other projects were worth more than The Division Heartland. In fact, can anyone tell me how well X Defiant is doing in the comments down below? Of course, it's only been out, I believe, about a month or two, and I think, yeah, it's about a month, and I believe also that the first season has just begun, so it's really hard to tell exactly how well X Defiant is going to do. I just don't see that much really about it. When I go onto YouTube or Twitter, I rarely see anything about it at all. It may well have a thriving player base, I don't know, but I personally don't know anyone that really plays that game, so I can't imagine it's going to have much longevity, even though I actually thought X Defiant was half decent. Now moving on then to the main paragraph that I wanted to discuss from the article, which reads, former Ubisoft level designer Ryan Smith took to social media to reveal that The Division Heartland was originally meant to be a low-risk Battle Royale mode for The Division 2, which came out in 2019, when the subgenre still welcomed new entrants. It had a pretty clear plan and was going well, but Ubi and Red Storm, another Ubisoft studio, had other ideas and it changed drastically, Smith continued. Sad it won't ever see the light of day. So this all but confirms what many of us already believed when Heartland was first announced, and that's that this started off as a Division 2 game mode. In fact, even when it was announced as a separate game to the Division 2, the amount of comments that I saw of people saying, is this coming to the Division 2? Is this a new game mode? Because I think most people thought it was, and that's exactly how it started out. Now, why did Ubisoft and Red Storm decide to make it kind of its own thing? Because if they hadn't, I'm sure this would have been in the game right now, and I also know the community is always going to be crying out for more game modes like what we had in the Division 1, so I'm sure that this would have actually been a really great addition to the game. Now I can tell you why it didn't make it to the Division 2 as a game mode, and you guys know why it didn't make it, and it's money. Now whilst X Defiant would have been free, it would have come with a battle pass, it would have come with a bunch of cosmetics. All of this stuff was seen in the alpha footage from testing, etc. You know, all of this stuff is part of free games, so it was definitely a money-driven decision. A game mode in the Division 2 would not have generated any cash, certainly not to the same degree as something like the Heartland would have if Heartland was successful. Now what we don't know, of course, is whether or not the assets developed for Heartland can be used in the Division 2 with some work. Now of course it's very unlikely, the article specifically says this won't ever see the light of day, and I know it's a real stretch, but I am a little bit hopeful a version of Heartland might make its way into the Division 2 at some point, or, and I think this is much more likely, the Division 3. We are about 3 to 5 years out from the Division 3 being released. It is currently, I believe, in development. If it's released at all, of course, it may well be that Ubisoft decide into, 3 years into development they don't want the Division 3, like Heartland in development for 4 years or more, and then it gets cancelled, who knows. If Massive want to get kind of the hype brewing for Division 3 within the community, I think confirmation that a version of Heartland will be coming with the Division 3 will generate this. I'm confident in that. Now, moving on to the final paragraph of the article that I want to discuss, it reads, "Despite Heartland's demise, Ubisoft claimed the series still had a future. As for the Division, CFO Frederick Dugart said in yesterday's investor call, we have an ambitious roadmap that relies on investing in the Division 2, the Division Resurgence, which will come on mobile this year, and we have the Division 3 that is in development. We already knew that last part from when the company very casually announced the Division 3 last year." I have to say, it is actually a real shame that Heartland never made it out, because I know that a huge portion of both the PvE and I think an even bigger portion of the PvP community were very excited for the Division Heartland, at least based on the very limited gameplay that we actually got to saw. I was very excited myself because, I'm a huge fan of the Division 1 PvP, even with all its craziness and sometimes insane bugs at points which maybe just want to smash the game up, of course. And then we had survival in the Division 1 as well. Now, Heartland looked like, to me, it might encompass both. It has that PvE element, it has that PvP element, it has that survival element, and, at one point, it also had this kind of battle royale type element. It also had elements of it which we've not really seen in other games, where we had the almost like the floating clouds of contamination. Rather than having a circle that you would get in a battle royale that would slowly get smaller, this would have clouds of contamination, and I thought the idea was new and fresh, and I thought it had a chance, if I'm being honest with you. Now, maybe we'll see Heartland in the Division 2 at some point. As I said, I think it's very, very, very unlikely. I think it's much more likely that we're going to see this in the Division 3, or at least a version of it. I think a PvE, VP, survival type, BR game mode with some really novel kind of ideas would be great. And if it's done well, I think it would keep me engaged with the game for longer. I think the one thing the Division 2 really lacks, and I've said this a million times, is something to keep me engaged whilst there is a lot of downtime. Because of course we get the manhunts every so often, and that's changing with Manhunt 2.0. We're getting kind of lore updates every week, but those lore updates, they're only about half hour to an hour, and then there isn't really a whole lot else for me personally that I want to do. Whereas if I had something like a survival game mode in the Division 2, or at least a Heartland game mode, a PvEVP survival type battle royale game mode, that would keep me engaged. What I used to do in the Division 1 was play PvP. I really enjoy PvP in the Division 1, and that's what would keep me engaged in the game whilst we waited for new content, essentially. And I think the Division 3 will absolutely need this. So perhaps Heartland, or a version of it, could give us that, and I really hope it does. But let me know how you'd feel about a Heartland type game mode in the Division 2 or in the Division 3 in the comments below. And I want to thank you all for watching. Epic out.